Hola, everyone. I hope you can hear me. It's such a pleasant surprise to have you all here, especially since I just found out 2 minutes ago that we were supposed to go live. Given all the time zones that we are traveling in with all the meetups that we're hosting in the next 2 days, it's nice to have you all back here. I'm really happy to have the opportunity to work on this content with the experts who are going to uh, share their knowledge today. So I don't want to take away any time from Juan Camilo and his guests for the first panel discussion. So without any further delay, Juan, you have the word.
Thank you, Sultan, for the invitations, and thank you everybody for joining this session. This session is titled Turbo Update, Recent Movements in Latin America, where we would like to discuss the regulatory status of some countries in Latin America, probably main challenges when landing in LatAm, and as a B2C or B2B has faced, and the environment probably for new M&As that could start occurring in Latin America. And let's finish if we have enough time to discuss a little bit of international liquidity for the environment in Latin America. Now, having said that, I would like to introduce what I can call a world-class panel, starting with Ilana Klein, she's Senior Latin Market Director and iGaming Consultant at Playtech. We also have Vera Moto, Business Development Executive at Habanero Systems. We have also Martin Litka, SVP for American Regulatory Affairs and Responsible Gambling and at Entain. I think your last name is Lichka, right? Is the right way to pronounce it, Martin?
That's right. Thanks for that.
And we also have Javier Guerrero, Managing Director at Mexico at Nube. So thank you, everybody. Let's start a little bit with our discussions, and let's have let's start with LatAm at glance, and where we can say an X-ray of the regulatory status in Latin America, discussing a little bit of the main markets of what is moving forward on the iGaming industry. I will take it to like 4 minutes to give a fast introduction of what we have right now, and then we can start to have your insights. In Latin America, the growth of the business is evident with a big potential for marketing activities. We got Mexico, a growing market on online casinos and sports betting, which is still awaiting the interest of international operators to invest in Mexico. However, this environment of brick and mortar requirements still difficult to obtain the online licensing in Mexico. Recently, I have read that in June 2021, the Mexican regulator mentioned something about that publishing in the following weeks a new draft regulation that we will update the betting legal framework to be aligned with the real market. On the side of Colombia, we have a regulated market since 2016 with recently approved live casino, instant betting, and the first quarter of 2021 revealed a market with a turnover around $2 billion of turnover, 4 million of registered users on the country, and a GGR close to 100 millions. That presents a steady growth of incremented more than 130% compared to 2020, with 17 active licenses. On Argentina, the recent license regime for the province of Buenos Aires with a great potential, but what we can call a fragmented market of provincial and state regulations with limited license availability. And well, I don't know, updates for Peru. We are still waiting for that final regulations to happen something. So having said that, Martin, would you please let us know your insights about the environment of the legal framework in Latin America and countries of interest?
It will be my pleasure. Good morning, everybody, or shall I say buenos dias. Thanks for having me. I have to admit that to my utter shame, I'm not Latin American, but in my defense, my wife happens to be Brazilian. So there's hopefully a connection. In terms of my thoughts on where Latin American markets currently stand, indeed, Colombia has for years now been the beacon of light and hope, hopefully showing to all the other markets in Latin America that they may, or they are and able and they can achieve workable regulation that will have attracted interest from operators, not only domestic operators, but also operators from abroad. And indeed, Entain being one of the licensees, we have welcomed the news that additional product verticals have been permitted. So certainly very, very good news about Colombia. And as I've just said, I'm hopeful that the other jurisdictions that are in the throes of regulating their markets, including Brazil, and I'm sure that we will come on to Brazil, will draw at least some inspiration from Colombia. I will not make it controversial, Juan Camilo, perhaps later, but I agree with your assessment of the Argentinian situation. Indeed, the market is rather fragmented. On the other hand, the size and I suppose the market power, and I'm sure that my fellow panelists who have proper jobs, I'm just a lawyer, and they seem to be from the marketing and commercial side of things, will share their proper views on the potential of the Buenos Aires market, or markets, the provincial one and the city one. But I would suggest that that is the key opportunity in Latin America, or in Argentina rather. And then I suppose let's see what, if anything, will have happened in Peru and whether Chile will live up to its promises and issue a draft regulation in a foreseeable future.
Yeah, I agree with you, Martin. We're still waiting for some movements in Latin America, like Chile, which has probably a potential market because it's one of the strongest financial countries in Latin America. Ilana, would you like to update your views of Latin America? As I understand, you are more in a commercial side. Probably you can just give us also that potential view and interest of Playtech and yourself.
Well, Playtech historically has been very active in the Latin American market. I would say even a pioneer. We started with a famous Caliente deal in Mexico back 5-6 years ago, and today it's really exploding. It's largely the largest B2C operation in Mexico, probably in Latin America. And this gives us a lot of appetite to do things in Latin America. Before that was everything about potential and emerging markets and dreaming of Latin America so big in the population and the mobile, but nothing was real done to a reality of having an operation that really provides, you know, the commercial value that Caliente did to the Playtech group. And this, when you create a monster, you need to feed it. So basically, this gives us a lot of appetite to go ahead and try to do the same model in other markets. And then we did the Wplay, which basically was taking the opportunity of an existing operator. With this became the modus operandum of Playtech in the Latin American market. We don't enter alone Latin America. We always search for a local partner. We gain from this local partner the knowledge of the market, because things are quite different from our experience in Europe. And we needed to do a lot of optimizations in order to reach the exact player environment and there are different operational practices. So also we search for the ideal partner in Mexico, and Wplay was out there, was very clear, one of the largest operator with their. We enjoy a lot to having partners in most of the countries in which they have, and you said it at the beginning, Juan, land-based operations and retail operations, because we don't believe anymore in this division. We only see one channel that can coexist, and this omni-channel for us is a reality. So we try to find the local partner, that someone who has also the retail and the online, and we can play with it. Wplay was there. And then Colombia for us was another big milestone. It's been launched already 1 year. And as you know, we applied for the license in the province of Buenos Aires, and we actually acquired one of the key licenses, and it's yet a challenge. Even if we did apply for the license and did won the tender, it's a challenge because what you say before, the division and the lack of security economically in the country. I wouldn't say that this is a big win with a lot of smileys. It's a big question mark for Playtech. On terms, not on the potential, or we don't have any doubt. It's simply the things that we always repeat: regulation, how much is important that it's, it has the things that needs to have in order commercial efforts. We want to go big and to take sponsorships, and then you need more than one province, and you need to synchronize with the other provinces. Finally, we are there. We truly believe that this will become something very important for us, and yet very optimistic with some concerns regarding the current situation of the fragmentation. Geographically speaking, this is a very important issue. I wish we could reach a different we are acting in order to reach a different geographical situation in the future. It's not going to happen in 1 year or two, but we believe that for the long term, we need to synchronize to have one country with one brand, with one license, and at least some agreements in between provinces. So for us to operate, as we know, with the freedom that we operate in other regulations with federal law. So the big next thing for us will definitely be Brazil, in which it's really been a dream for always, and now it's closer than ever to be a reality. The amount of opportunities that Brazil brings because of its size and the amount of businesses that are there is so big that keep us busy, and it's really what we are currently looking at many different angles of business opportunities. And you mentioned Chile, which again, I think it's a quite small country compared to Brazil, and yet the stability and the financial potential of Chile is probably, after Brazil, one of the most interesting countries in Latin America to look at.
Yeah, for sure.
So
this
is what is keeping us.
Sorry.
This is what is keeping us busy.
Yeah, for sure. For sure, Chile has a potential, an incredible potential. I mean, it's one of the strongest economies. However, now we have numbers, at least. I mean, 4 years of license of public information in the case of Colombia. I mean, a $2 billion turnover is not a bad number at the end. Vera, would you like to give us your views about the market in Latin America?
Sure. I completely agree with what was said so far. We are living a very exciting phase. Now it's not just a promising market anymore. More and more countries are opening right now, and the Colombian market is very stable, having been live for many years now. We are working there. We are working in Mexico. Actually, the first opportunities that we had in Latin America were in Mexico, because the leading operators are global operators, so it was easier for us as a global provider to enter there first. Then we certified in Colombia, and recently we applied at LOTBA. We got our approval just a few weeks ago. We're already live in the city of Buenos Aires under the hybrid framework for the land-based casinos. Like it was said before, the problem in Argentina is that being a federal country, having 24 different provinces, we find also 24 different regulators and financial institutions. So you need to allocate a lot of resources to address every single jurisdiction separately. And then we are also very interested in keeping a close eye to the other countries. Like Ilana said, Chile is for sure one of the most, the market that holds the most potential in the country. And together with Brazil, for sure, given the size of the population and many other factors, very attractive markets, both of them.
Yeah, Brazil, it's a continent. It's difficult to, I mean, they're brothers, but it's difficult to consider like, I think Latin America and Brazil, it's a continent of its own. I mean, we know here. Any comments from your side about, of course, plus the development of real regulation, any updates that you've foreseen should come to the already regulated markets? Just like a short comment about what you would like to happen in Latin America on the side of the regulator, if a regulator is listening to us. I mean, what the market, in your views, perspective, needs to, let's say, continue with a steady growth and probably like develop faster and get higher numbers close to probably markets like Europe. Please, Ilana, Martin, any.
Yeah, I think besides Colombia and Argentina that already have in place modern regulations, I think the other countries like Mexico, Peru, Chile, etc., need also to update what they have to the current market conditions.
And in a similar vein, I believe that both Vera and Ilana made the critical point. Of course, we appreciate that every country has its idiosyncrasies. At the same time, you'd like to think that they're all trying or have been regulating, in some cases, the same thing. So to a large extent, and that goes back, I suppose, to my point about Colombia hopefully being seen as a potential source of inspiration for the other markets. There's not a huge need to reinvent the wheel, in my view, so take the good bits, learn from the bad bits, and of course, throw what's locally required and needed into the mix, but do not overcomplicate it. It may sound too simplistic, but I reckon that's a recipe to attract operators, not only from overseas, but also incentivize the domestic operators to take out the licenses. And then, competition will ensue and the consumers will benefit, or at least that's the economic theory, I suppose.
Yeah, for sure. Javier, as a payment provider, your views, what's the environment you find in terms of regulatory perspective? What's the feeling of a company to interact with different countries in Latin America? Let's say, do you think we have in general a stable regulation in terms of gaming, of payments, and also with regards to the iGaming industry?
Well, thank you, Juan Camilo, and good morning, everyone. This very much aligns with what's been said already. At the end, the payments environment will follow the regulations. So this means whenever regulation is in place, of course, the opportunity is big. Some regulations, all regulations, such as the Mexican one, still works, and there's the Caliente case Ileana was referring to. Of course, the Colombian case is very much a case to follow, and same thing happens. Argentina, big betting country, a lot of savviness from the Argentinians about doing a sports betting, basically, but still the payments environment follows what happens in the regulatory world. So it's fragmented, as I said before, and then payments still a little bit more conservative in some of these countries because of that same reason. Brazil, the giant of the region, and with some solutions in place that are already facilitating the payments environment a little bit better than in other countries. And then the rest of the region, Peru, Chile, same as in the rest of the environment. Big promises with a lot of potential, but again, basically waiting for the regulatory environment to shape up as expected. This said, what I would add is our proposition will go in terms of find a platform that could be able to provide the easiness of being a one simple integration, one simple point of contact, but at the end also adds for you the benefit of doing that local payments environment as a tailor-made for each country. Meaning, if a country such as Mexico does have specific rules for payments, a payment platform will be accommodating its offer to that one in that country, and then adding maybe some APMs, the variety of APMs you can add as a payment platform for the betting and sports sites. It's very important to expand the offer and attract numbers of users in each of the countries. So basically, that will be my input on that, Juan Camilo.
Thank you, Javier. Big promises is what's happening also all the time in Latin America. In terms of regulatory perspective also, Martin, and a topic that you are an expert with, and I think for what I've heard from your side, you're passionate with this. Do you think in terms of responsible gambling, advertising, auto-moderation in advertising, being part of the solution, not creating the problem as an operator side, and of course with B2B providing support to operators, should we continuously send a message in Latin America to have a real structure and a strong responsible gambling programs and moderate in advertising to avoid the regulators start to creating restrictions and different regulations that at the end will affect the market? Can we have just like your views on that?
In one word, absolutely. I suppose the fact that I am indeed passionate about gambling regulation speaks volumes about my mental sanity. But if I shall digress, I completely agree. The experience in other markets, in particular European markets, but I would suggest, and there's a whole day to talk about that tomorrow, of course, Zoltan isn't there. The US experience already started showing the same effect. And that is, in my view, at least, the fact or the circumstance that the industry does need to get on the front foot when it comes to responsible gambling, not only responsible gambling, the whole consumer protection piece, and that from the word go. And don't get me wrong, I totally appreciate all the commercial considerations that are associated with it. Also from the regulator's perspective, I would suggest it makes perfect sense to bring all the interested and legitimate parties, emphasis on that, into the market, and then start growing and developing the market further. So I suppose what I'm saying is that it wouldn't make much sense to have a sky-high responsible gambling standards that nobody can meet and that are completely out of kilter with reality on the ground. At the same time, I would strongly suggest that there's a need to start from already highly set bar that all the license operators will live up to enter the market. And once these operators are in, I can imagine that it should not be that difficult for these operators to work collaboratively with one another, but also with the regulator, with a view to protecting the consumers. And I suppose we could have a very long and protracted debate about the individual tools. I will not be wasting everybody's time. What I would say, though, is that, again, from my perspective, the concept of affordability, as long as it's set in very reasonable terms that, again, are not out of touch with the market reality, is absolutely essential to all this. Because on the one hand, it will give everybody in the market, including the consumers, the certainty that they are being protected, but they are being protected to the extent they need. So, of course, a huge difference between an addicted gambler who would have lost all his fortune on a gambling market, that in my view, that people like this do require help, and they should not have been allowed to gamble in the first place. And the onus is on the industry, being supported by the regulators, and somebody who is in a position to gamble or bet responsibly. So I think all this needs to be thrown into that mix and stirred with everybody's input and with everybody's input on a collaborative basis. And this will ultimately generate a very functional framework for all the operators, but also customers and regulators to live and die by.
Yeah, for sure. I completely agree. Completely agree. I think that the conclusion is to be part of the solution, not creating the problem at the end. I don't know, Ilana, probably you want to comment something about responsible gambling programs and this structure of advertising and marketing moderation?
I would say that one of the things that maybe probably can help, and it's not really established yet in Latin America, and it's one of the things that we would like to, to be a little bit more proactive, starting to do some actions on that vertical is cooperation. The possibility to regulators to cooperate in between themselves inside the country, inside the continent. And we saw some experience in Europe once we managed, together with most of the key operators in the market, but basically one of the things we fight for a long time was the shared liquidity for the poker network in Europe. And things like that, but not only that, also common practices that they were successfully integrated in Europe once evaluating what it's being done in Italy compared to Spain, and I think that cooperation, forums of cooperation in between Latin American regulators, countries is something, it's something that it's yet need to be more explode. And yes, we want to be a little bit more proactive on that specific topic, because I think we can just learn and gain a lot. And also the regulators, you have a continent that slowly but surely it's been becoming fully regulated, and then there is a lot of common practices. It's the same language. There are a lot of same common practices and some payment methods that they're in common, and some fraudulent activities that can be shared. And the technology is, so far extremely much more accurate than that was a decade ago when Europe was relevant with new regulations. So a lot can be done, and a lot of the fears and things that being placed in the regulation are so easily solved, technology speaking, but also with cooperation between regulators and countries in the aspect of online regulation. So I would say that this is an important angle for us to start looking at together in cooperation with other operators in the market, but a lot to do with the communication in between regulators and operators to synchronize what's being done in other countries and how this can feed regulations in new countries, emergent, coming, existing. So I would say that that's an important issue for us, cooperation.
For sure.
That we don't see it exactly in the point that we would like to, and we want to be a little bit more active on that angle.
For sure, I think we need to send a message to increase communication between regulators and in Latin America. In Latin America, we have something called the Andean community, which is supposed to be some vision of what should be the European Commission, and we're supposed to share legislation for consumer rights protections, interactions with financial system, etc. Unfortunately, is not as efficient, and the regulations are not that enforceable as we are expecting to. However, I think that could be one of the paths to send a message to the Andean community to get together and try. Even thought that we are different countries. It's not only one region, not one country, not the same culture. So getting to culture and to landing in Latin America. As B2C and B2B, can I have some of your sites? Let's start with Vera, about landing in Latin America, the business experience in terms of culture, in terms of doing business, on complying with local regulations, some challenges that you have found landing in Latin America. I have saw you many times here, so I'm sure you're an expert.
Exactly, that's one of the first points. You have to be present if you want to do business in Latin America. You have to be there or visit often. Meet the prospect, the associations, the regulators when it's possible, and discuss in person. I think the way that business is done in Latin America is different from Europe. So it's really key to be there when trying to penetrate this huge market. And then, like we said before, compliance is certainly one of the most important aspects that we have to pay attention to because of the fragmentation or the lack of regulation in the market because of federal states like Argentina. For example, in Argentina, now like I said before, we get the approval at LOTBA, where as an international provider, you need to have a local legal representative. So you need to find the right partner to represent you there and to help you and assist you through the process, not to be ready as soon as possible for your operators. And about customer service, I think given the South American market is very different from Europe again, and I think there's a lot of disparity among the operators. So we have, especially in Mexico and Colombia, we have the leading operators have a huge and modern and quality product offering and a strong casino team, etc. While we have many other operators that just started or they come from a land-based background. So they need a lot more assistance from our side to get to know the online product better and how to better market the content that we offer to them.
Martin, challenges, banking, payment, customer service, culture, interaction with the regulator, compliance, your insights as operator, please.
Well, this may sound silly, but as I mentioned earlier, I'm married into a Brazilian family. So for a European guy who's lived in the UK, that certainly has been a challenge, although I did feel very, very welcome. And I'm deliberately using that analogy because I believe it actually is very similar, and Vera got it absolutely spot on from my perspective. You know, it's a different continent, different cultures. Of course, some parts of them are arguably based on European cultures, and it does help that the continent speaks the beautiful languages of Spanish and Brazilian. Portuguese. I think there are certain similarities based on language and culture, But indeed, in terms of practical challenges, it needs to be approached as a completely separate region on its own, and within that region, specific approach is required to individual countries. So yes, being on the ground is absolutely critical, understanding what is required. Again, the gambling regulations themselves, some of them are clearly based on, for example, on the Spanish regulation, but then the interpretation might be completely different. Plus the incumbent structures that pre-existed, in particular on the land-based side of things, that pre-existed or would have pre-existed, the online gambling regulations, they play a massive role. So again, all this needs to be reflected in the approach. And of course, when it comes to the likes of banking, that's probably, well, as Juan Camilo knows, that would be a very long story that we sadly mustn't tell you because it's subject to confidentiality. But let me just say that you got to deal with it as it comes, in my view, and crucially and critically, you can't simply grab and implant a Europe or UK or US like approach to these markets, not only when it comes to banking and licenses. So one size fits all, in other words, doesn't work. So from an operator's perspective, yes, Entain clearly is a global operator, but we try to approach every single market that we have and will have entered in on its own merits.
Sure, but banking is still one of the biggest challenges in Latin America, and let me give a glance of why. It's banking is still a very big industry in Latin America, but very dependent of US banks and European banks, and the reputation of certain industries like the gambling with the AML, it's a fear that creates on those banks because they're very dependent. And that will bring to Javier, give us your insights about what's about working with the real money at the end, which is what you process, and interaction with the financial system. That should be also a big challenge in Latin America with this industry specifically.
Yes, indeed it is. Mainly because, as said before, the regulatory environment is still very uneven, and the payments regulation very often follows other regulations, which means once you get a regulation for gambling in this case, then the payments regulation comes in place to fit that new scheme, that new rules in place, and try to adapt on that. So, said before, if regulations are not even for all the countries, then payment regulations are less than that, which means again that the interpretation that you will have from a Peruvian entity about what's required to take cards in that country is quite different than it does for a Colombian or for a Mexican or for a Brazilian, which is sort of a challenge and one of the biggest reasons on why to look after a partner that can then fit the largest coverage and has already made that work for you, if that's going to be said somehow, because that means having local presence, local resources, a local entity with a local background in each of those countries if you want to hold an account there, and then with that work with each bank, even though the regulation is in place, because some of them they interpret one way, some of them they interpret another. They have different appetites, different preferences, and it's a door-to-door effort with the banks and the card schemes and the APMs to be enabling the payments environment here. So basically the largest learning we got from that is be present, be local, and make a story yourself, and understand not only the region, but each of the countries and how they are trying to fill in. They know that there are enormous opportunities and a big business to pursue. But banks are still very reluctant to understand how much this complies or not with their appetites on the requirements for compliance. So it's a matter of as I said, door-to-door work.
Javier, let me ask you something. As a payment providers, which for sure you are aiming to get big online operations. Do you think that in Latin America you still require this physical presence of network because of probably low interaction with the general population in Latin America and the financial system? I mean, low credit cards numbers in different countries, etc. Do you think still require this type of retail presence for payment, for cash in, cash out?
That's a very interesting question, and no doubt the pandemic has done a lot into what's to be responded about that. Because very sure my answer a couple of years ago would have been yes. That's the way of doing things all across the region, but that has changed in the past 18 months heavily. Still, the banks and most of the regulators requiring a local presence, so that's still a need, more than a market need, a business need that you need to fill in. But speaking in the online world, you can do a lot of things. You can do a lot of things if your platform is able to bring in the most popular and the most common payment method from each country, and without too much hurdles to enable those for you as a online gambling site operators. Then in the practice it's much more useful now than it was before, in terms of not being absolutely present, but still having maybe a local entity because of that banking thing. So it's just a mix of things that is evolving as we speak, and that's something that we need to keep an eye on, because I'm certain that it will keep evolving and it will keep making a little bit easier things as all of these challenges that we're speaking about progress.
Yeah, of course. Ilana, your experience with local partners, like you have mentioned it, for instance, in Colombia with WPlay. What about those challenges about like payment processors and the technology, or against creating a retail presence and a network for grabbing that money? I think you're on mute, Ilana, sorry.
Yeah, you're right. As I said before, like for us, we understood that it's going to be very hard to enter each and every market and try to understand each and every of the aspects. The preferred games, the look and feel, the compliance issues, the regulation, payments, the way that people like to be contacted, and many other things. One of the things is payment, but there are so many things to understand in one country when landing. So for us, the best shortcuts we find is to have a local partner in each and every country. And for us, this is the translator of the regulator, of the content, of the payment methodologies, and of the customer behavior or willings or UI UX, whatever. And yes, we can also argue and we can discuss with him, but basically he will be for us the language translator. And even though we presence a lot, and I used to travel heavily to Latin America to presence and to be there, and I agree 100% that this is, so necessarily. But besides that, you really cannot comprehend everything. The bureaucracy, the needs, what is being said and what is really needed. There are so many levels of communication that need to be understood in order to adapt and to be successful in an operation, that for us the last word is the local partner. So we made our life easy in that sense and complicated in the sense that it's not easy to, to operate a joint venture in each and every country. And the other side, from what it takes to understand what will be the best payment methodology or how to approach a regulation environment, we listen to the local partner. And that's why we invest so much time, so much efforts before we pick up a partner. We don't look only at the commercial aspect, but also at the personal aspect, the connectivity. We spend a lot of time before we sign a joint venture, a couple of years, I would say, even if the price will grow and grow because time is passing and then the earnings are increasing. But for us, this time is valuable. I won't say it takes time to have a joint venture in place, and for a reason, because finally that will be the person we trust, the person we listen, or the group of people we listen. And this is, we as I said, we simplify, we complicate things because we simplify. This is the channel for us. This is the understanding. This is the way to land. We will spend a lot of time to find a local partner. We will spend a lot of time to understand if we have a good communication channel, not only an optimal commercial value, interesting opportunity, but then we will listen to the local partner and we will work in synchronicity. And that's it.
Yeah, for sure. That's why probably we are already witnessing a lot of M&As in Latin America. In the case of Colombia, we have so probably 3 or 4. I think the environment is creating already a legal framework for that. I don't know, Martin, do you have any comments about probably the environment of M&As in Latin America? Have you explored that path to land in other countries?
I suppose in general, the whole industry is getting more and more concentrated. And the same, I agree, goes for Latin America. And I can imagine that the key reason is that there's only so many customers to cater to. And if operators join forces, then they would at least hope to put themselves in an even stronger position to challenge for those customers. Plus, also to Ilana's point, pretty much more than anywhere else in Latin America, perhaps brushing Asia aside, having a local partner is or might be absolutely essential. Not only because in some instances the regulation itself requires it, and it's an absolute no-brainer, but even from the commercial perspective, because from the standpoint of somebody who represents a global operator that happens to be based in London, but with operations all around the world, we are by no means pretending to be omniscient. And for that reason, we do need local expertise, not only local expertise of somebody like Juan Camilo and him being a brilliant gambling lawyer, but also the local partners that do understand the commercial aspects of the individual markets, or not only commercial aspects, but also marketing. And we will all sound like a broken record, but I will say it again, crucial and critically, also the cultural idiosyncrasies that need to be woven into the product offering. Now, you would not necessarily be offering cricket betting markets in Argentina or Brazil because people don't even, and why would they know what cricket is? I'm exaggerating slightly, but there's of course much more to it. But that's indeed what in my view the global operators need to do in these local markets to be successful. And if there is an opportunity for an M&A, that arguably increases the likelihood of success.
Yeah, understood. We still have, I think, 10 minutes, and I don't want to leave the opportunity to discuss with you, I mean, all of you as an experts on the gaming industry also, and to still having the attention of our assistants. I would like to move about the environment of certain movements in terms of regulatory perspective also and commercial needs. with regards to international liquidity. Is Latin America prepared for international liquidity, share liquidity, ring-fence liquidity, just share liquidity among other countries, just among operators? I think this is also some legal, there's a certain legal knowledge required for this, but also the commercial perspective is very interesting here. And with a payment provider, also interested to understand these misconceptions about probably the international liquidity, transfer of resources, AML problems, which is kind of the myth that have been created against international liquidity. Please feel free, any of you who wants to discuss or share your knowledge about international liquidity and experience. Martin, start with you.
The conversation just to put in the topics you need. What I would say, still a work in progress. Of course, there is a trend towards getting there, but still a work in progress. Still finding some regulations locally not fulfilling or creating the best scenario for that to happen, but efforts are in place. That's what I can perceive. Still a little bumping road, but and not aligned. I mean, cooperation and also in this matter will be great for that to happen, and not very much in place now. But I mean, the first glitches of it are showing up, and hopefully we'll get there. So that's what I can put as an input just to get the conversation going.
Okay, Martin?
I'd concur with Javier that it's been a roller coaster ride, but I would also agree with you, Juan Camilo, that there unfortunately happened to be a lot of myths connected with international liquidity peddled around. And in all honesty, I'm yet to see evidence that the mere fact of international liquidity being allowed, or at least not prohibited, would have generated any of the anti-money laundering or responsible gambling or alleged issues, rather that the opponents of international liquidity would always come up with. International liquidity in itself, we could be agnostic, perhaps even cynical, and argue that, in my view, it's a fact that international liquidity does not create these issues. These issues are created by completely different forces. And I suppose the final message I'd like to convey is that, yes, formally speaking, international liquidity doesn't exist in Latin America, or perhaps doesn't exist just yet. On the other hand, in the previously unregulated markets, a number of poker networks have been operated that centered around the concept and all the principles of international liquidity. And as I've said, we'll have to make it circular, but that has not given rise to any of the issues that the opponents of international liquidity would have thrown our way to, I suppose, defend their existing businesses, perhaps, but that may be speculation.
Yeah, we still have, I think, 3-4 more minutes. Ilana, please.
I have no idea how international liquidity became to be an issue, to be honest with you, because there is no reason behind that, no logical, or at least not something that can be demonstrated that in any way different from a local liquidity, that anyhow there is a share of funds, and there is a system that tracks money coming and going from one player to other, and inside the country, in between different operators, there is no difference whatsoever in the manage of international liquidity that there is in local liquidity. So, and there is no increase in the levels of none of the activities with the international liquidity. On the opposite, I would say, because there are so many rules and they're so afraid. So basically, actually, they are less in a funny way, much less than in a local liquidity. So I think the international liquidity issue was more of this communication issue, being afraid of something that we don't know how it's being managed, technology that we hardly understand how it works on the auditing level, and sometimes it takes money. It takes time to explain to an operator how we manage with the 100 licensees across the globe, over 16 regulations, and we do international liquidity to explain how is the matching of the funds and how each needs to pay for each player. It's complicated. It's complicated, but also chemistry is complicated, and we use computers and internet. It doesn't mean it's not. And anything, anything that has a little bit of complicability in the technology perspective doesn't mean that this is in any way less secure or whatever. I think I really don't understand the issue between, and the international liquidity for Latin America will be very important. It will allow not only the poker to be a relevant product, because without the international liquidity is a product that hardly will survive, but not only for the poker, also for the jackpots and for games that today, maybe international liquidity exists in your mobile when you play today, when kids play Plants vs. Zombies on the PlayStation. This is international liquidity. And, it's all over in your PlayStation and Nintendo Switch and whatever. We do things on a shared environment today. We connect, and with the pandemic, we even demonstrated we can work, we can sign agreements, and we can do a lot of things on an international environment. So, and it's okay. And we can also play and share funds and do things that are maybe 20 years ago were considered to be a little bit complex, and today are quite simple things to do. So I really don't understand the complicity to have international liquidity in America. I think there is only things to win, and I hope, and as I say before, one of the things that is missing in Latin America for us is the communication level and the cooperation level. So once we have communication channels and cooperation channels, I'm quite sure that international liquidity will become a reality. And if it's not inside Latin America, countries will start allowing international liquidity with Europe anyhow. So it's just, or they do it internally, and hopefully will be internally, or they will need to open up for international liquidity with Europe, like Colombia and Mexico allows today, basically, those sort of things. Well, as far as they're well explained, and we present all the technology and the architecture, but basically those things that are not currently banned.
Yeah, for sure. In the case of Colombia, international liquidity, even the basis for liquidity is created, called co-organized operations. However, it's not very well designed. The rules are not that clear. However, the lack of that international liquidity is the reason why poker, even being a very, very popular game in Colombia, in the case of Colombia, it only has a participation of something like 0.05% of the portfolio of the game.
Absolutely.
So it's
and that's the same story for the international jackpot networks. And our Colombian can get access to something that could be very marketing oriented, very, 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 very attractive, that probably an amount of jackpots that they never seen in the country before. The capabilities to, in a week or 2 weeks to have a jackpot filled out for a couple of millions pounds. It's not something that have been seen locally. It's not possible, because you cannot reach such a jackpot in a week. You cannot do it. But you can have 20 of those games or 50 of those games on that same amount of level if you have international liquidity and they are being displayed. And so there is a lot to win. And I don't see the losing for having. And so it's just a matter of communication, organization, and synchronization. It has to be. I hope it will be.
Yeah, Okay, we are out of time, unfortunately. I think it was a very joyful discussion and experts insight. Martin, Vera, sorry I didn't give you the last word. Ilana and Javier, thank you for this amazing panel and very, very interesting. Sultan, the panel is yours.
Thank you, guys. Yeah, it's very interesting to hear, especially since we started Gaming Americas a little bit over 1 year ago, and have covered many developments. And recently, the news are really frequent. It's really refreshing to hear such an awesome discussion. Thank you, everyone. So next up, we are going to head to discuss Omnichannel in Latin America. I have here the next moderator just disappeared. Oh no, he's here. Hi, Alistair.
Hello, apologies.
No worries.
Internet appeared to drop. I have very little control of it, I'm afraid. I'm currently in a quarantine hotel.
Ah, okay. So I will leave you to get started with the panel discussion.
Okay, thank you, Zoltan. Nice to be with you all. The topic for this panel is Omnichannel in LatAm. My name is Alistair Townsend. I am managing partner of Sherlock Communications, a PR and digital marketing agency based in Latin America that has a specialism in gambling and sports betting clients. And I'm also joined by an esteemed panel of experts today. Christian Acuna, who's head of sales LatAm at Play and Go, Domenico Mazzola, commercial director at Altinar, Chris Dempsey, managing director at Playtex IGS, and Jorge Didier Flores, Latin America Government Relations and Business Development Representative at Gaming Laboratories International. Hello to you all. Can you all hear me, importantly?
We can hear you very well.
Yes, we can.
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay, guys, so the plan is to keep this discussion pretty informal and let it flow a little bit. So I'm going to ask each of you some questions individually. But if any of you feel like answering the question after the first person has responded, do please jump in. Don't let me carry on. And to everyone watching, if you have any questions as we're talking, please do send them in the chat and we will try and get to them at the end. So to kick off, Chris, why don't we start with you? Keep it very simple. What are the business benefits for sports operators in bringing their retail customers online? Why should you do it?
Okay, well, I should, before I answer this, I should say my expertise is more with casinos than sports operators, but I was involved in one project with a major sports betting company here in the UK. You know, certainly what I saw in that project was an organization that had lots of points of sale in retail, found a way to grow significantly online with a low cost per acquisition of player, because you know they were using their existing points of sale to register people, and because these were established customer relationships, I think you know what they found there was that they could build a brand loyalty through this omni-channel relationship. So yeah, I think probably they were the two main things: the lower CPA and the stronger brand loyalty.
And would that apply to casino operators as well?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit different for casino operators. Certainly, it was different here in Europe because the sports betting operators got online first, and they established the online casinos way ahead of anything credible from the land-based casino operators. A lot of the land-based casino operators came with generic white label offering that they didn't control themselves, where obviously the bigger, more established sports betting operators had their own platforms, they had their own marketing teams and risk management teams, everything in-house. So I think it took here in Europe the casino operators a lot more time to catch up. They were a long way behind, but I think what we've seen in the last 5 years or so is that the casino operators have leveraged the strong relationship they have, particularly with the VIP customers, where the hosts have ongoing personal relationships, where they can see these land-based customers regularly, and then they can build on those personal relationships that, and they can then develop that into an omni-channel relationship and into an omni-channel product by providing things like, you know, live table games from within the casino, with that element of additional familiarity and trust that comes with that. I think then the land-based casino operators are you know, now able to compete on something like an even footing with the sports betting operators who got first march on them, and they do that. They have that face-to-face relationship. I think is probably their biggest competitive advantage.
Sure. Let's think about it from a regulatory point of view quickly. George, maybe this is a question for you. How does having an omni-channel presence increase regulator expectations and indeed operator responsibilities?
Hi, everybody. Well, I think that the role of the regulator here is really crucial. It's really important, as they have to establish all the conditions and the requirements that has to comply, the operators, the suppliers. So I think that the regulator needs to consider when they are going to approve or to include for example, an iGaming operation, okay, they need first to understand how's their market, right? And based on that, they will have to define what type of license they should grant to the operators, right? It can be maybe a public bid, it can be also, for example, an open market, or maybe it can be an extension of a land-based license that they have. For example, in Lotba, they approved recently, or last year, they extend the operation to the 2 land-based casinos that operate in the city of Buenos Aires. So depending on the market and the knowledge that they have, they will need to define that. They will also, it is important also that the regulator understand and knows how's the online activity, the iGaming activity, right? They need to be training on the different activities and the different type of games. And I think that if the regulator has an open door policies and they listen to the operators, to the suppliers, to the labs for sure, so they will get more understanding and knowledge about how's this activity. They also have to listen and the other regulators of the region, right? So they don't do the same mistakes probably that the regulators did when they launched before, right? They have also to establish an attractive tax for the operation when it's really specific to this type of gaming, right? And for sure, they need to if they're going to regulate, they need to have implemented specific and good controls to control the operations that they are going to allow, right? So they need to establish good internal procedures so they can control properly. And also something that we as a lab are really related is about the technical requirements, right? They need to establish a good technical specifications that must comply the suppliers, the operators. They don't have to reinvent the wheel, right? They have to make it simple. They have to make it sure, transparent, fair. So this is in the benefit of the player, right? To promote it like a fair play, right? This is, I think, the expectations and the responsibilities that the regulator should have.
And do you think, because in some markets, obviously it's a very nascent regulatory space in Latin America compared, say, to Europe, do you think that's actually a benefit when it comes to regulating omnichannel compared to having to adapt existing regulation that was based around land-based casinos or, you know, offline kind of rules, moving them online? Do you think that's actually going to be a benefit to some of these regulators in these newer markets like Brazil, for example?
Well, the regulator doesn't have to copy paste any regulation, because all the markets are different one from each other. So they have, for example, the behavior of the players is different from one country to another. Even it's different from one province to another province, for example, in Argentina, right? So it's not a copy paste they have to maybe took like a model, right, of how they regulate about the operation, about the activity, about the technical requirements. It's almost the same. We as GLI, you know, that we have public standards based on the best practices of the gaming industry. So this is a base also that the regulators can take for a technical specification.
Sure. Still thinking about regulators, Christian, perhaps I could come to you. Is there a way that regulators can actually contribute to omnichannel growth?
Definitely. I mean, we've seen it in certain countries of Latin America where we have an omnichannel solution, so we've been deploying it. And in some countries, we see that land-based and online are pretty much in sync with some features regarding regulation, such as having players register so we know who they are before they're playing. If that happens on both worlds, it's easy to have an omnichannel solution. In other markets, obviously, some land-based operators are not the same as online, and some, for example, on one side do not register player names, and other side they do. So trying to make both ends meet is much more of a challenge, and obviously we need the regulator to help us with that. So definitely the regulator has an important role, and obviously, as you know, in some regulations, the online world is a world on its own, and the land-based on the other side. And other markets such as Mexico, it's much more integrated. Pretty much every land-based operator has a permit to go online. So when you have that type of country, it's obviously much easier. So yes, how a country has defined its regulation and its rules, it definitely can play a big difference how we can innovate and deploy solutions in those countries.
Sure. So we've talked a little bit about why you would do this, what the business benefits are, and you know, the role of regulators in it. But what we haven't talked about is the how, and I think that's almost the more obvious question. So Dominic, maybe I could come to you on this. So omnichannel obviously has been a topic of discussion for a long time in the industry, but how do you actually achieve it in practice? Should you look to go with just one partner, one supplier, or look to sort of form a best of breed mix of solutions? What's the most effective way of doing it?
Well, this is a very good question, Lasdir, and I actually thank you for asking me that. In general, I would like to, let's say, move a little bit away from our industry and take the examples of other ones that probably are older and potentially at the same level of, let's say, innovation. Let's make, for example, let's take as an example an iPhone. Really and truly, Apple does not build an iPhone itself. What they really do and where they're pushing a lot, the engineers, is to build and write very specific and innovative business requirements. Then what they do, they use subcontractors in other places, in other countries that are specialized in building, for example, just the batteries. So Apple does not build the battery itself. They ask somebody that does this as main activity and buy the battery from them. The same if you decide to buy a Ferrari. Ferrari does not produce brakes, for example. They buy the brakes from Brembo. So they buy components from companies that are specialized in specific components of their main product. They assemble it, they customize it, and then they distribute it. For this reason, well, in Europe, this is becoming quite the normality. I mean, for operators to get, let's say, different components from different suppliers that are specialized in them is pretty the standard. We are seeing this as, let's say, a growing trend as well in South America, where operators are, let's say, now understanding and valuing more and more the benefit of getting a product. But it's simple. Imagine that you have a company of 200 people and you have, let's say, 4 or 5 departments that are working on 4 or 5 different products. Of course, you're going to split the power works and the resources among all the products. So probably for one specific product, you will have maybe 10 people working at that specific in that specific area, in that specific product. On the other side, you have a company which has 50 people, but that are dedicated only to that specific component. Personally, and I'm happy to discuss this with my colleagues in the panel, I would prefer to get the product from the company which has 50 people dedicated to that job, rather than another one that might be bigger in total number of employees, but then because it's spreading the workforce in so many different aspects, so many different departments, that might not be so easy for them to achieve the same quality for all the components, for all the products they are working with. So definitely, then there is a challenge, because you must make sure that if you decide to go with, let's say, different providers, they must have a proper communication channel in place. They must have, let's say, they must be aligned with the scope of the project, with the same business attitude, with the same working attitude, in order then to deliver a smooth solution that is, let's say, then delivering. Because of course, if this is not in place, then probably you might have even, let's say, worse situations to solve. So in general, if you ask me, I would consider to, let's say, get specific products from specific companies and assemble what I need for my specific market. Because again, then the next topic of discussion would be localization, would be flexibility. How flexible is my supplier to adapt its product to my specific needs, that even in the same country, even in the same market, could require adjustments, could require to develop features, because maybe my kind of business is different from the same operator that is already using the solution coming from that supplier. So this is key. Localization, the flexibility is the key, no matter what kind of suppliers you get. Then, of course, again, personally speaking, I would prefer to get specific products for specific suppliers, but this is might become, because I'm working for a sportsbook supplier, then then I'm just I'm sales guy doing a sales pitch.
Can I add something to what Domenico said? I mean, I think everything Domenico said makes perfect sense, and but I'd like to talk a little bit about why it happens that way, and it's because Omnichannel is about the customer journey, right? Getting the customer from point A to B, which is when he experiences your brand, all the way to when he's having fun and decides to come back another day. The thing is, customer journeys today just evolve so fast. It's cycles every month. The customer is changing and evolving. So a company that, as Domenico said, tries to do everything is going to fall behind. They can't keep up. The only way that you can ramp up innovation and try to keep up with the customer journey, just be one step behind and not 10 steps behind, is having an ecosystem of providers. And I mean, and that is spot on what Domenico said. I just wanted to add on from the customer, why we do it that way. And it's to keep up with the consumer on his customer journey, because he's moving way so ever fast, and it's, for us, it's a race to keep up with him and learn his patterns and try to adjust.
Yeah, I've worked on many of these projects. So some that have been entirely Playtech projects, and some that have been an amalgamation of various companies. And I think my perspective so far on them, the first projects we did were all Playtech primarily, because that was the way that we can get these things launched. But as we've gone on, we've done a lot of projects where perhaps our land-based system is connected to somebody else's online platform, or our online platform is connected to one or more different land-based systems. I use a rough formula within our business unit. So we're divided into specialist product teams. So one team deals with the table games, another deals with the slot management. And I say, as soon as you take anything out of one of those teams, you can double the amount of effort to cross two teams within our business unit. You take it to another Playtech business unit, you can double it again. And you take it outside of Playtech, you can double it again, in terms of the amount of management and effort that it takes to oversee that. And I think there've been a lot of projects that I've been involved in where people have underestimated what it takes to manage multiple suppliers, because effectively at that point, you become the product manager. So you need to have product managers, you need to be managing the supply chain, you need to have business analysts, you need to have project managers, you need to align release schedules. So the customer journey is an important part, as Christian says, of planning this, but it's definitely only one part. When we look at things like the responsible gaming, AML, new regulation that's coming through the pipeline, as soon as that starts running across multiple vendors, it does get quite difficult to manage. And I'm not sure there's a right way to do this, but definitely I would encourage people not to underestimate the amount of work that it takes when you've got a platform provider and a sports provider and a CRM provider. Probably that is the right way to go for a lot of companies, definitely. But don't underestimate the resource and expertise that you need in-house to manage that type of thing.
Well, Chris, at the end of the day, there are pros and cons in everything in life. So it's fine.
In addition, I think, well, I don't work in an operators. I'm not in the operator side, but I think that is reasonable, right? What Domenico, Christian, and Chris said, that to have only one provider that makes everything is a really risk. But also because in the strange case that you have only one provider that is going to supply you everything, this is a risk, right? To be dependent of only one company and to work like that is really risky for an operator, right? To only work with one supplier is really risky. You depend on everything on them. But also another thing that it's important, right? That the operator has to do a really good selection of all the suppliers that they are going to work with, because the intention of the iGaming is to increase the game offer to the players, right? So you need to have different suppliers for different type of games, also for different games. You need to have payment method suppliers, you need to have the data center supplier, you need to have fantasies for suppliers. So as Domenico said, it's suitable that if you have specialized supplier for each one of these type of games. So at the end, the supplier shouldn't be considered only as a supplier, but it's going to be like the partner, and they need to provide all the support to the operator, right?
I think another thing that we're finding more recently is that irrespective of where your content's coming from, and what we're seeing is in the more mature regulated jurisdictions such as the UK, the expectation now from the regulator regarding creating this single view of the customer across your omni-channel business, a single AML profile, a single responsible gaming profile, it is really important. So even within our in-house developed systems, we've had to create a separate customer data platform to consolidate all of this data from multiple sources so that we can deal with these back office processes effectively. So it's a complicated process, and the regulatory change moving beneath it can make it all the more complicated. So I certainly wouldn't choose the right providers, absolutely, but be aware that where you're doing a new integration for the first time, then you've got to find partners who are going to work well together. And where possible, I'd encourage people to look for open platforms, people who have the established ways of integrating with third parties, because otherwise these things can be very time consuming and very risky.
Chris, let's hope that in South America they will not start behaving like UK then. So,
well, Domenico, that was in fact going to be my next question. I think Chris, actually, you touched on this a little bit earlier, almost sort of taking a step back. obviously omnichannel has been a buzzword and something we've heard about in Europe for a long time. But how is it going to be different, or how is it going to be similar in Latin America? I'm aware that our panelists talk specifically about Latin American markets. What can we expect to see that is different, and what is going to be the same?
Are you aiming at me, right? Yeah.
Yes, Christian. Sorry.
Okay, yeah, it's okay. Yeah, well, as I spoke recently, it's all about the consumer. So yeah, omni-channel will be different, deploy different, and we'll probably have a little bit variants of technology in Latin America, and that's only because the consumer we are serving is different. So we have to have different ways of approaching him. I mean, just a basic example. I mean, in Europe and here in the US, where I'm based, things like 5G is almost a reality. So that's a very important technological channel we can start looking into very soon for mobile gaming. But in Latin America, it's a distant reality. It's not nearby. So an omni-channel solution that in Europe could use 5G is not something we could deploy in Latin America until a couple of years down the road. So yeah, we have to chase down our consumers with the technology that is accessible to them. It's a two-way street. So there's no sense in deploying a super omnichannel solution if the consumer won't be able to engage in it. So yeah, so definitely omnichannel exists here in Latin America, but as I said, with the technology that's available, I think we have a responsibility in our sense of innovation of sometimes tweaking a little bit our products to make it more accessible, more friendly, and more aimed towards the Latin American consumer. So behind all of this, I think the most important thing for any operator and any supplier that's developing omni-channel technology is know the customer, his behavior, who he is, how he plays, where he's going, and not only in the casino world, but what he does when he's not in the casino, like what are his patterns on a day-to-day basis. Where is he going? Does he go to a shopping center? What's the average family size in each country? All that data is really important to understand the consumer, because through that knowledge is how we can serve them best. But yeah, omnichannel is in Latin America, and we are deploying it. So,
Chris, perhaps I could come back to you. Oh, sorry, do jump in.
I was going to say there's been a lot of talk and a lot of learning. I think that's probably the big difference is in Europe, a lot of people have spent a lot of time, a lot of money inventing various different forms of wheels. I think now probably there's an established set of practices and approaches that work. So perhaps in LatAm, we now have the advantage that we can have less of the talk and use some proven methodologies that we know work, with obviously the local flavors for the appropriate payment and regulatory climates.
So from that European experience, then what would you say are the most common pitfalls or mistakes that operators make when trying to implement this strategy?
Well, I guess I've seen a lot of different approaches. As I say, I think some people have gone as a relatively small operator to a very big technology provider such as ourselves, and expected a great deal of agility, and that isn't us. We have agility within our individual products, and we have the ability to move our products forward for different markets and things like that. But I think that, if somebody is looking for everything to be instant reaction to this new marketing campaign, I think some people came with very high expectations of what they could get from a single provider. But probably what I saw more of is people underestimating the amount of work that is involved in building an ecosystem of connected providers. But as I say now, there's a lot of established, proven technologies and integrations. So there's an established way that a platform, a wallet, a game content can be integrated with an online gaming platform, that a land-based casino platform can connect into an online wallet, that a customer data platform can consume data from both sides. So hopefully a lot of these pitfalls shouldn't apply to operators in Latin America who can bear reference to what has already happened and not try to reinvent the wheel too much.
Domenico, I wonder if I might put the same question to you. What are the most common pitfalls?
Well, okay, let's start defining, I mean, in general, two types of operators starting recently in LatAm. You have, of course, local operators with very strong knowledge and history of a specific local market. And then you have, let's say, in general, European entities entering through M&A, through partnership, of any sort, with local partners in a specific market. Then, having said that, of course, in the second case, choosing the right partner with the right knowledge, and in general, when it comes to LatAm, the majority of the knowledge goes on the power of controlling the local network, because we know how important it is still in South America, in specific countries, to control areas, geographical areas, actually, even discussing related to, let's say, the land-based operations. So this is the main point, and many people, not many, but some people underestimate this importance, and they believe because there is an operator with a local license in, I don't know, Colombia rather than Argentina now, just because of that, acquiring that knowledge can benefit, which it's not always 100% true. For local operators who are currently working there, then the main challenge, again, I go back to the first point, to the question we discussed before, goes really to understand, and I agree with Chris on this aspect, goes really to understand who can give you a solution that works also in a reasonable time. When reasonable time is definitely not 2 weeks, but definitely cannot be 2 years. So there must be a balance between, let's say, the moment I signed the agreement and the time to market, from where I can start literally moving and collecting deposits. So these are a couple of points. And for example, touching also, I wanted to add something before related to the omnichannel combination. Well, still in South America, in different countries, and I think also George can add on this, not allowed to register as a player in a shop, and still allowed to place anonymous bets. So definitely to reach the level where we can gain data that can then suggest to operators ways to create proper and let's say targeted marketing campaigns, we need to move as well on the regulatory environment if we want, because of course we have to decide if we want to do it or not, in order then to move on that direction as well. So to sum up, I would say these two main points, and in my opinion are not that small.
George, I wonder if you want to jump in there.
Yeah, well, answering to Domenico, yeah, well, we have here, for example, in Peru, we have the anonymous bet, but because it's not regulated yet here in Peru, right? In Peru, the sports betting operation, even through iGaming, through the online or through the retail, is not regulated yet. It's legal, but it's not regulated. So here in Peru, what is not forbidden is allowed. So it's perfectly fine. And yes, we have anonymous bets for lottery, for sure. We have for this type of sports betting. But coming back to the main points, to the challenges, I think once again, I'm not an operator, but I think that to know really well the market, it's really important, because based on that, the operator is going to define the type of games, for sure, that with the restriction and limitation established by the regulator, right? Also to consider, they have to consider the possibility to have a partnership if there is an international operator that want to enter into a Latin American jurisdiction, for example. They will need to consider to have a partnership with a local company, right? One important point that they have to do is, when moving, the client, when converting the client from a land-based client to an online client, they have to teach them how to play. They have to make them trust in the internet, right? They have to make them trust that they can put some money, they can do the payment through the internet, and this is safe and secure. So this is one important point that they have to consider, and it's a challenge here in Latin America because even we're in the internet era moment, right? There are still many people that doesn't trust in the internet for the payments, right? For sure, the selection of appropriate and accurate suppliers and partners is really important, right? And one important point that they have to do when moving from land-based operation to online operation is that the operator has to understand that the operation are totally different. I know some friends that had some casinos, then they install, they open a retail sports, right? And they thought that the operation was really similar, you know, but at the end, it was a totally failed, this project. So they have to understand that the operation is totally different, the controls are totally different. How you approach to the clients is totally different than for a land-based operation, right? And they need for sure to control the internal controls that they have has to be reinforced because everything now is in the cloud. Everything is everybody has access to all the information and data from the players and from the organization. So I think that these are the main challenges that I can identify for an operator on doing this transition from land-based to iGaming.
George, I'm glad you mentioned data because obviously in recent years we've seen a number of new laws like the GDPR in Europe or the LGPD in Brazil, all about data protection. And this surely must be one of the bigger challenges when you're going from land-based to online. How can an operator protect and manage customers' data effectively?
Well, coming back once again to the regulator, they have to define exactly all the controls and that the operator has to implement on their operation, right, on the organization. There are two types of security evaluations that the operator can do and is requested in many regulations, right, to mitigate the risk of losing data and information from the organization and from the client, right? You have, first of all, you have the typical technical test, the penetration and vulnerability test, that basically the purpose is to find some weakness in the network and to prevent and mitigate the risk of a hacker, right, that can attack your network. So it's really important that this type of testing is done periodically, at least once or two times a year, because the technology is moving fast, so they need to update every time all the infrastructures and the systems. But also, the risk is not only outside the organization. The risk is also inside the organization, because you may have some employees that are not so loyal to your company. So you need to have, as an operator, good policies and procedures implemented. They have to be really robust and solid, so you can mitigate all this risk, right? You need to have many types of documentation and processes that can allow you to have all your information protected. And for sure, as all the information is in the cloud, right? You need to contract appropriate data centers. You need to host all the information in certified data centers, right? But this is typically included in the regulations that all the regulators establish on their jurisdictions.
Yeah, keeping high availability and information security is an extremely difficult thing for a lot of operators to do, and that's why a lot rely on companies like us to look after that for them, because the team that's required to maintain those types of things is a pretty expensive thing to operate.
Chris, we talked a lot about getting online, actually the first steps and how you should take them. But let's assume you've now got online, you've established an online omni-channel presence. how can a casino operator in particular grow sustainably from that point? What are the main drivers of growth?
For me, the people I've seen do well, it's been about building the customer relationships and building something unique that, perhaps an online only operator or a sports betting operator can't offer. So it's about that experience. So that retail experience of visiting the casino and being looked after very well, but then extending the feeling of that experience following you from the land-based casino into the online with the same dealers, with the same products, with the same wallet, with the same reward programs. I think the casino is a very competitive marketplace, so I think the casinos need to bring a unique selling point to it. And I think the challenge a lot of them had in early days in Europe was that they didn't offer sports betting, or they didn't have sports betting that was competitive with the specialist sports betting companies. So I think then that loyalty, that brand loyalty of being the preferred place for the customers to manage their entire gambling experience is quite difficult. So I think that's probably the biggest challenge the casino operators have, but the biggest advantage they have is the facility, the land-based casino that they can invite their players to.
And Domenico, picking up on that point from Chris, and I'm being provocatively reductive in what I'm asking here, is that kind of growth, that experience that Chris is talking about, is that driven more by marketing or by technology?
Well, this is a very interesting question, and in general, I will answer a very politically way, say that it's a combination of both, because let's put it in this way: marketing alone will get you the contract signed. Technology will get you the extension of it. So it's true that with a good marketing campaign and with a good marketing strategy, you can get, I would put it in this way, you can get on both levels, you can get players registering on your website, and you can get operators deciding to adopt your solution. But then if you don't have the technology to sustain the promises that you made in your marketing campaign, then you will basically lose whatever you achieved before. So on the other side, if you have the best product in the world and you are not able or capable to sell it properly, you will not have any customers to show that your technology is what you, let's say, what is best. I mean, you don't have the customers to sustain and to in the market that you have a very good solution. Let's put it in this way. So definitely you have to work on both. You have to balance the two things also, because on another level, on another perspective, you must be able, let's put it in this way, to digest the projects that you are getting and are coming through your marketing campaigns. And again, this is let's say a good point for players, because if you're getting so many players that the system becomes unstable and they cannot sustain the amount of bets you are getting, then you are in trouble. If you're getting so many operators that your delivery team is not able to put them live again in a reasonable amount of time, then you struggle again. So in my opinion, it's a combination of these two things, because if you lack on one of those, you will still struggle anyway.
Christian.
Yeah, I'd like to put in my 2 cents regarding content, because obviously Playing Go is a game developer, and yeah, I firmly believe that content is king, and the consumer, a player, goes into a casino to play games, right? He goes there for the entertainment. So everything else in the omnichannel journey that he does from A to B until to the moment he's playing is pretty much a facilitator. So pretty much when the player walks in through a land-based casino through the front door, or he's starting to register for the first time in an online casino, everything from there until he reaches the games should be seamless and invisible. Pretty much like the man behind the green curtain, right? Making things happen, but nobody sees them. So pretty much, yeah, platform providers, other technologies, payment systems, yeah, shared wallets, all that. The idea is that the consumer flows through them as fast as possible. And that's when those channels are achieving their goals, right? Because their goal is to be a highway, not a road full of of stop signs, right? So the omnichannel experience, it has to be like a highway. It has to be fast, has to be seamless, and it has to flow. But the ultimate goal here is for the player to reach the content, and the player, yeah, and this journey there has to be great, pretty much. And once he reaches that content in a fluid way and he has fun, that is what's going to make loyalty and recurring revenue. That's what's going to make him come back the next day. So yeah, I think omni-channel is very important for content. We have to open as many doors as possible for players to reach that content. It's pretty much, I make the analogy to other industries like Netflix. I can access Netflix on my phone, on an airplane, and when I reach a hotel room now, and on my computer, everywhere. I can go through any channel that I want to reach and see the next chapter of the series that I'm following. So, and yeah, casinos and the online omni-channel experience has to be pretty much the same. Get the player to the content, make them have fun as fast and seamless as possible. That is the ultimate goal of omni-channel. So yeah, us content providers are really happy when operators are fully committed to providing an omni-channel experience, because it allows more players to reach our games.
Yeah, perhaps the land-based casinos aren't the most progressive in this respect. They're very much still a Blockbuster Video rather than Netflix, I think.
Yeah, but they're getting there. I mean, one of the important things is, especially like when we were talking previously about pitfalls, I think one of the biggest pitfalls, I'm going to take a step back there, is that I think you guys mentioned the partnerships, but the important thing is to find a partner that doesn't believe in a silver bullet, because we as providers, we can't take a silver bullet that'll do everything. We need a partner that truly believes in innovation. So if the operator is sitting down saying, hey, what solution did you bring me? It's not going to work. If that casino, even if they're the old Blockbuster, say, hey, I'm ready to innovate and it's in my DNA and I'm ready to go, that commitment is really important to make this happen and to move forward.
I think in the online space, we see a lot more openness in terms of connecting content together in a single place. And we see some of this in the betting offices in the UK as well. We have open platforms where one cabinet can provide games from 30 different vendors, but yeah, it's still not the case in most.
It's wishful thinking. It's just wishful thinking. That's all. Let's hope we get there.
We must get there one day, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Chris, I'm keen to talk about player protection and promoting responsible gambling in the context of omnichannel. Can you comment a little bit on that? I mean, if you've been a land-based operator and you're suddenly moving online or to multiple channels, how does that impact your responsible gambling or player protection strategy?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. This is where a lot of our work has taken place. Partly due to the regulations that we operate in, but partly due to our internal strategy around Playtech Protect and building the solutions that support responsible gaming for our operators. And yeah, I think that the biggest change moving from a land-based only operation to omni-channel that we're seeing in the more mature regulated markets is the expectation from the regulator that this is one business relationship with the player. You can't treat yourself as two separate entities. There's an expectation now that the same player playing land-based and online would be subscribing to a single player protection program. So it's difficult sometimes to implement that in parts of particularly table games in a land-based casino, but there's definitely an expectation that operators will apply appropriate controls and make protection tools available. So, you know, we have some relatively manual solutions where it's we're just triggering interventions within the retail environment. But we also have more kind of automated solutions where we're using AI to identify the early indicators of a potential future problem in the behavior that players are exhibiting. And you know, these things now in a lot of European jurisdictions are expected. And I think what we've seen is that what's happening in European markets, GDPR and the AML protections are you know, gradually dissipating across global markets that are regulating.
Guys, I'm conscious that we have 5 minutes left. Zoltan, I'm not sure if there are any questions that have come in. I can't see any in the chat here, but I'm not sure if you've got access to something I don't.
No, there aren't any questions.
Okay, okay. Right, well, perhaps we can think about wrapping up with one last question, and perhaps it's the same question for everyone, starting with Christian. Thinking specifically about innovation in the market around omnichannel, what can we expect to see? What's the biggest innovation we can expect to see in Latin America over the next 5 years?
I think definitely the biggest innovation, at least in omnichannel, is yeah, I think the fusion. I think it's pretty much during COVID, all the land-based here in Latin America are making their push to online. That is definitely the biggest one. I think, yeah, Latin America, due to COVID, was hit particularly hard. We don't have the same hospital systems as more advanced countries. So the only solution was to fully lock down, close things down. And the land-based casinos were hit really, really hard. And I think it was a true shock for them. And now they're making big strides to go online, to go on the channel. So yeah, I think it was a big like just boom. they were awoken, and there are some pretty big players there, and if they play their cards right, they can and implement the correct omnichannel strategy. They can yeah, they'll be a force to be reckoned with in the near future. So I wish them luck, and we're here to help them with whatever they need.
Domenico, what's the biggest innovation we're going to see over the next 5 years?
I have an idea, and I think not many people in our industry are going to like it, which is basically PlayStation will build a tool to place bets within their games without leaving the PlayStation Network platform. And probably Amazon will do the same, hopefully not Netflix, because otherwise we will all have to find probably something else to do. I hope I'm wrong.
And Chris, you talked about AI, which always sounds a bit sci-fi to me. What kind of tech innovations are we going to see over the next 5 years?
So we've been, you know, AI was a big part of what made Playtech successful in the early days. You know, going back 15, 20 years, we were using AI for, you know, econometrics and creating accurately, you know, predicting lifetime value and segmenting customers and providing the appropriate offers. For the last 5 years or so, I think the work that we've been doing on AI has been very much more targeted at player protection and identifying these early indicators of potential harm. And I think, you know, if I was honest, probably the big innovation isn't a big innovation. It's just the fact that you'll be able to make omnichannel work without having to invent it, because more or less every project that we've been involved in, there's been an element of a big internal project for the operator to make it happen. But I think now there's enough established integrations, enough established approaches that whether you want to focus on one particular vendor or you want to create your own ecosystem, you can probably make that happen without building a team of 300 people to manage it.
And George, finally, I think we better wrap up after this this question. But what's the biggest innovation we can expect over the next 5 years?
Well, here in Latin America, we expect that all the gaming activities growth, right? Here, that many jurisdictions can open their market. For example, Peru, that it's since a long time waiting for a regulation, right? You have new markets like potential new markets like Chile, Brazil, as you said, the different provinces from Argentina. But I insist on the point that the regulation is really important. Certifications for sure are really important. So all the functionalities and the good functionality and the compliance of the requirements are satisfied by the operator. So I don't think we can predict what is going to happen in 5 years. For example, in 2019, we didn't knew that we were going to be locked at home during more than 1 year. So, but I think that online games is going to continue being the future for a long time.
Sure. Okay, Zoltan, I think that's been 1 hour. So I think we should probably say thank you to our panel, and thank you to everyone for watching.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Predicting the future. There's some wise words from Buddha, which say that don't worry about what's going to happen in 5 years. Worry about today. So
I agree with him.
That's true.
I also wrote in the chat that in my opinion, virtual reality will also somehow make it through to the gaming industry, because Facebook is pushing it very, very hard, and maybe there is going to be some entanglement of the gambling industry in metaverse as well.
Let's see.
Yeah.
See you, Zoltan. See you guys.
Okay,
bye.
so we are moving forward to the final session for today, and I would like to invite Gabriel from Continent 8 to switch on his camera. Gabriel, where are you? I can see John. Hi, Gabriel.
Hi, Zoltan. I believe you have to authorize now.
Yes, I did now. Okay, good. Hi, nice to see you again.
Oh, okay, cool. Now I can see you.
And
too.
everyone else in the panel, I will leave you to it.
Hi. Okay. Well, thank you, and good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. First of all, I would like to introduce this new conversation, because we all believe that it will be a conversation, that we will talk about the World Cup, the 2022 World Cup, and how LatAm operators can leverage the huge opportunities in its present to drive customer acquisition and retention. This is the main idea. This includes odds, markets player, and what will they expect to be made available, Then the customer experience, especially in mobile experience, because we all know that the mobile is the most important second part of our body nowadays. So after this introduction, I would like to introduce all the panelists, because they are very well-known people and they know many, many things about this. And I would like to, first of all, introduce Mr. David Charnock from FSB. Please, David, if I'm wrong. I will say, if I'm wrong, please correct me. You are a philanthropreneur. Am I right?
Yeah, I don't think that word really exists, but I think it sort of covers a little bit of businesses in general, and philanthropy, helping out as an older person. It's good to give back a little. Yeah, so combining.
Cool. Best to say an angel investor. This is more best known, Thank you, David. And then I would like to introduce Mr. John Gordon. He's from Incentive Games and founder and CEO of Incentive Games. Incentive Games is a B2B software provider specializing in customer acquisition, retention, and monetization. So this activity for this next Global Cup It will be very interesting. And finally, but as important as the first two, Tomás Carvalhais. He's from Brazil, he's from LatAm, as from Buenos Aires, like I'm living, but now he's in South Africa, as far as I know. And he's the regional director for Hero Gaming. He's an executive and he has 10 years experience in all of these activities, online casino and online sports betting for Brazil and all Latin America as well. So after this short introduction, I will leave all the participants to answer my first question, that is, what opportunities does the 2022 World Cup present for operators in LatAm? Specifically because it's the last game for Messi, you know. Please, David, would you like to start?
That would be wonderful. Thank you very much. Yeah, thanks everyone for joining us and for taking the time to listen to what are allegedly our words of wisdom, which I appreciate the introduction. I just wanted to start just with a very brief anecdote, really, about how important this game is, and soccer in Latin America. And in the 2014 World Cup, my kids were still very young and they'd been living a few years in Costa Rica. And they'd never lived in the UK, although they're British citizens. And there was always a conflict of interest in our household, being an Irish mother, an English father, and two sort of kids of the world. And they felt more affinity towards the Costa Rican team than the English team. So we were actually traveling through the center of San Jose. We couldn't watch the match. I had to go to a meeting. And we were traveling through the center of San Jose during that match. And the streets, I've never seen them completely deserted. All the bars were overflowing with people watching the match. And I think it was the safest place to be, actually, sort of hidden away in a car, traveling quickly through the streets. But it just really, it's incredible how passionate people are about the sport, and also, you know, the opportunities that it brings along. And sort of, you know, coming back to your question directly, Gabriel, we are a leading cutting-edge platform provider in sportsbook and in online casinos, and also in the retail sector. And we have a great opportunity. It's a very new opportunity for us. I've only very recently joined the company, like about 3 months ago, but I haven't been involved in gaming since 1990, primarily in live gaming and in the provision and manufacture of live gaming equipment. So, but I've also had an involvement as an angel investor in 32 Red, going back to 2002. So my experience has sort of covered all areas. And having lived in LatAm for 13 years, I've sort of got a reasonable flavor for what it is that goes on. And with the opportunities that we're specifically looking at in these few months that I've been here, we've got a very well-developed opportunity within Peru, coming out of Lima with a very big operator there. We're also quite advanced with a potential partner in Brazil. And also we've got a number of conversations going already with operators in Mexico, in Colombia, and in Argentina. But I really feel as though our momentum is really taking shape and gathering pace within Latin America. And we're very ambitious about what it is that we actually really want to do. And I think really through taking a very responsible approach towards gambling and the right tools that need to be in place, we really want to align ourselves with the operators in the area as being a very stable and robust provider for this wonderful opportunity. And it's very exciting already. You know, the playoffs are being prepared for, and going to be a very interesting clash of culture between the North Americans, the United States, and Latin America, which is going to also be a very interesting starting point sort of going towards over the next few months. So I guess that's how I view the first question.
Okay, thank you, David. John, I believe that this will be a very good opportunity for you and your company as well. So what are you expecting?
So yeah, we at Incentive Games, we are essentially content providers. We try to be entertain the users for longer, and we steer away from this mindset of increase the user the GGR every day and maximize the profit immediately. It's more about having the best product we provide on a B2B level. And whether it's free-to-play games, fantasy games, we've got a range of products. And for me, whether it's the Euros or the World Cup or anything like that, any big event, it's what Incentive Games can provide. But rather than me just talking about Incentive Games, that's what we do. I think at the heart of it all, customer acquisition during a big tournament for an operator in any continent is obviously of huge interest. But as we've seen time and time again, whether it's our product or your own product or anything else, retention is the key here. So you can acquire them, but you need the best product. And I'm not talking about just Incentive Games product. I mean upstream and downstream. I mean the registration process needs to be on point. The customer journey needs to be on point. Otherwise, you will acquire that user for the World Cup with the best prices or one of our Incentive games or whatever you use as a customer acquisition tool, but only the winners will retain them better. And retention comes with having the best product, not just the products we provide, but overall. And I think that's where we need to be, if there's operators in the room, need to be planning for when you do acquire all those users during the World Cup. This is not a flash in the pan, that you need to really have the product to serve your users and give them the best experience. And I think that will come, and whoever provides the best user experience and the best product overall will ultimately come and float to the top.
Cool, interesting. So the idea is to have all the customers not only for the specific event, but have all of them like a process, including all of them in different stages, to have all of them in your platform at the tournament.
Yeah.
Right, understood, cool.
And I also like to get the point across that we have money games, and never mind about the money games we provide, but I do like the approach when we work with the operator to show them that let's reduce the margin and we will increase the value over time because we will retain the customers for longer. Let's not give them a bad experience. Let's look at them differently. Let's look after the social responsibility and say, let's not increase our daily GGR, but increase it overall for a longer period of time. And I think it's all of those aspects that will retain the customers, because ultimately, big tournaments, you can acquire customers, but we're all about retention, and that's the key, I think.
Well, interesting. Thomas, and which is your point of view? Which opportunities do you foresee?
Thank you, Gabriel. Really appreciate it. Very, very wise words from the beginning. Since I joined, I've heard from fellows, David and John, my apologies, John, I called you Josh. The average gambler, they gamble at 3 to 4. We can call it gamble, we can call it sports punter as well. They play at an average 3 to 4 casinos or 3 to 4 different houses. We in our normal day-to-day behavior, we shop around for every single thing we do. We shop around for the best banking fees, we shop around for the best insurances. Why would we expect that our recently acquired client or customer or player would just stick to us just because they love us? That's not going to happen. That's not going to fly. So I 100% agree with John. It's about acquiring those players. I think if I can stick to your question there, Gabriel, what opportunities does the World Cup present to us? I would kindly switch it around. What opportunities does it not present to us? Because it presents every single form of possible opportunities we can have and that we already have. It's another major tournament, like the Euros, like many other sports events have taken place. It goes back to how can we bank from them? How well prepared are we in terms of our registration, our onboarding process? I keep on repeating some of the topics that John touched on because they're so true. Although he's in the B2B space most of the time, I'm in the B2C. I've been managing and launching websites and betting websites for about 5 to 6 years in Brazil and Latin America now, but every single thing that he said sounds very true to me. And there's one thing as well that Zoltan said in the previous discussion, as in closing, he just mentioned, I think it was a phrase from Buddha, don't worry about the next 5 years, worry about the now.
Totally.
Operators, I think we've been across the world, we've been so worried about what might happen in the future. Who's going to be the next, what's going to be the next big market? Is it going to be Brazil? Is it going to be Argentina? Is it going to be Chile, Mexico? Meanwhile, we're just having discussions. These markets are happening as we speak. There's major opportunities. Some of the markets are regulated. Some of them are on the path for regulation, like Didier, another good friend of mine, just mentioned. Peru's looking at copying Colombia's model of regulation. We have Mexico, which has its, for me, its controversies around their regulation model, but it's still in place. So opportunities are out there. Major games will happen. Major opportunities for all sorts of betting, from online sports betting to online casino betting. All sorts of opportunities are out there. It really goes back to how well prepared are we? Do we have people that speak the language? Do we have customer support behind the computers to actually handle those queries that will come from the Latin American clients as well? Those are the questions that would pose back on the question, Gabriel.
Yes, thank you, Thomas, because you opened my second question with these last comments, because finally, it's not only the opportunity for this specific game, but the big question is how all of you will be prepared, or how will you attract all these potential hundreds of million people to this event? Will you customize the tools for depending on the country, as you mentioned before? Don't know. Latin America, it's not an only one country. There are different languages, different, people. And so always the first question is, there is only one event, but there are different countries. So don't know, maybe you, David, just to continue the round, which is your point of view of this? How will you prepare? How will you attract this market to this event?
Thanks, Gabriel. Yeah, I think that's it's very crucial. I mean, this is the 22nd running championship, and it's very exciting that you've got something else in the mix as well. It's in Qatar. It's an Arab nation. It's the first time it's been in an Arab nation, and I think the expectations are very, very high, and I think customers in Latin America are really going to expect, an improvement in and upping the game as to what is actually being offered. They're going to expect a mature offering, and similar really to maybe what has been available in Europe or in the United States before. And there's over 100 different markets that are going to be catered for, and there's 64 matches. So it's a huge combination of situations, events, cultures, languages, as you say. It's a very, very challenging opportunity, but as Thomas was saying, it's an amazing opportunity, and it's an immediate opportunity. And I think it's very important that I came up with a number of items that sort of touch on this, but I think from a service point of view, one of the most critical matters, we all know what happened with other providers in the past, which I'll not mention, but having a robust platform, being able to be up and be able to support people. I mean, the credibility that goes if there is any form of a technical glitch can, have immense repercussions. So I think it's very important that there is a stability and a robustness there in the platform, and that's very, very critical to what it is that we do. We want people to stay online when they're making their bets, and that is probably number one for us. And then we need to have options of sort of multiple betting options, create a bet. We need to have, easy facilities for cashing out. And we do also have some very specific product offerings that we will be developing for the World Cup itself. So I guess, robust, I don't know if the word robustness exists, but having a robust platform is really critical.
Okay, understood. Yes, and I believe that this World Cup, deserves this kind of robustness. Yeah. So, John, do you agree with David? What do you think about how will you prepare? Will you do something specific for this?
Yeah, I thought the difference being is what David was talking about there at the end was specific products. That's where we come in typically, whether it's a fantasy football World Cup for an FSB client or whoever, a jackpot score predictor or in-play games. That's the sort of thing that we come up with. What works in Africa doesn't work in South America. So even though it's the same tournament, we work with the operators in each region, and we would build a bespoke or a product that we know would work in that region. And that comes over time, and every tournament we'll learn. And it's just to David's point that we're the ones that provide that sort of original content that to save the operators who are there to deal with the stuff that they need to be doing, the hundreds of markets, the 64 games, the robustness, the scalability, and we come in with the original product. So we start working on that as soon as the last tournament's over. So we're planning for that just now. What are the 5 games for each continent, and then we pitch them to the clients.
Mm-hmm. And just a question, because I'm from Argentina, will we have a specific game for Argentina with Argentina against Brazil, these special matches and all of that?
Yeah, we have for each, we could have a Messi game, you have a Ronaldo game for each country, for each region, so we can, how many goals will Messi score, how many cards will he get? Like, we build bespoke games like that would really tap into the emotions of the country. For instance, Argentina for his last tournament potentially. But yeah, that's the sort of stuff we could do.
Cool. Dan Tomás, which is your approach?
I agree. And again, Gabriel, I'm also so excited. I'm from Brazil, and we're continent brothers or brethren in a way, but we're big rivals. And I'm so looking forward to seeing Messi playing what could be his last World Cup. I'm not convinced yet. It could be or could not. We never know.
Uh-huh.
But I'm looking forward to seeing them playing together now that he's playing with Neymar and with Mbappe in the PSG lineup. So really exciting times. Looking forward to it. And I agree with what David said when it comes to the responsibility and having a responsible approach and making sure that your servers are well equipped and ready for the intake, the massive intake that will bring through the doors. And also what John said as well when it comes to having specific product per region. I am a firm believer, and for every single conference that I get invited to join as a speaker, I always humbly indicate and I stand firm for localization. This is very, very important. Unfortunately, a lot of companies make the mistake of seeing Latin America as one big thing, as one big market. We're going to go in there, we're going to just drop a website, we're going to Google translate it from English to Spanish. Some of them even think we speak Spanish in Brazil. Okay, let's just translate our site to Spanish and we're gonna make a lot of money there in Latin America. Guys, what is Latin America? Latin America is a massive continent. More than a continent, is a combination of the entire South, Central America, plus Mexico. We're talking 625 million people. Brazil only has 210 million people as a potential market. So what is Latin America? How do we approach it? Besides the language difference, there's also the cultural differences as well. There's the importance in events. So I think the localization aspect is very important. I've been lucky and privileged enough to, I'm able to stand here and say that every single product that I have helped to launch in Brazil and Latin America and help run it, they're still standing and they're still strong in Brazil and Latin America. Why? Because I believe, and I always try to enforce the importance of having, number one, dedicated people, customer service support, as much as possible, CRM initiatives and CRM people behind the wheel as well. That is also very important. Why is it? Because there is a need, Gabriel. Yes or yes, there is a need for cultural understanding of the market we want to enter. If we don't have that, we can even make money. It's going to be good to an extent. It can be short-lived, like I've seen some other operators as well, just like going on a venture, short-lived adventure. You know what? LatAm is not a good market. Bad mistake. It's just maybe a lack of understanding. If we're all humble in our approach, and if we're willing to understand the size, the dimensions of what Latin America actually is, and we're able to have localized specific strategies per country, more than per country, per region as well, because for instance, only in Brazil, we have 26 states. The culture in the south of Brazil, to the southeast of Brazil, to the north of Brazil are completely different. We even have different terms for the same things. So it does take a bit of work. It does take a lot of effort. Let me rephrase that. It does take a lot of work and a lot of effort. Is it worth it? In my perspective, and for what I've seen in the last few years working in the market, it absolutely is, provided we're able to localize our strategy.
Totally, I totally agree with all of you because, you know, Latin America, I don't want to say more things that you already said about this, but it's very interesting because Latin America is slowly but moving forward to regulate all the activities in maybe Brazil, maybe Argentina in different paths, but you know, this gives an opportunity for all the region, and if, as we are saying, we can customize and we can have regulation, you know, it's a huge market, as Thomas said, you know. So the third question, and in the same line of all these questions, is the Soccer World Cup is, you know, it's a major game. So I believe that all the customers are expecting a major offering, you know, something superior, something that can, you know, that the suppliers, the operators can make the difference, just not to give the same game as maybe they could have any other opportunity or during the standard year, if I can say. So, David, are you know, how will you work on this?
So, Gabriel, I think one of the key words that I would throw into this part of the conversation is onboarding. There's a lot of people here who maybe have never placed a bet before in their lives. They're inexperienced gamblers, but through sort of increased usage of mobile phones and cost of using mobile phones, there is, you know, a greater potential level of access. But these are inexperienced people, I say maybe never placed a bet in their lives, so they need to have an educational process
Interesting.
With say within the realms of helping them to be responsible, because as well as sort of learning about all the excitement of these new potential games, they also need to understand the risks of potentially getting too carried away. So I think it needs to be very much controlled as well as educational. So I think the process needs to be educational. The front end needs to be maybe through the use of technology, through bots, through training. People need to understand how to place their bets, the different options that there are for them, but very much within the realms of responsibility. And what we've actually tried to do at FSB is to improve the accessibility of what is our website by integrating an interactive sort of React, it's classified as a React-based front end to improve the customer experience and also to help out with the UI even further. So I think that's sort of getting that balance right between the two would be very, very important for us as a company.
Well, interesting. It was very interesting when you said, there's many people in this region that never played or never, used this kind of software. So I totally agree with you that the onboarding will be maybe a key success factor. Totally agree with you. Totally. So, John, as your company, what do you think about this onboarding, all these people, all this, superior experience? How will you attack this?
Yeah, I mean, we are specialists in gamification and React or whichever technology our clients use. But I think David touched on a good point there is the onboarding, if it's a territory where they are coming used to mobile phone technology and online betting, the onboarding is critical in each country within the region, and they have different levels of knowledge of those processes. But ultimately, whether in the US, the UK, or Brazil or Africa, it is about human-based design. The techniques that you use to bring them on board the process. So little bits of investment, we get their name, and then it's like a progress bar. And as soon as they've just got your name and their email address, we show a little progress bar that they're like 50% complete, even if we go more than that. So there's a lot of gamification techniques that you can use that myself and Yukai Chow, one of our investors and advisors, is as a keynote speaker on those sort of techniques. But I do believe that the onboarding process, as you were saying, is key. But special promotions, for the opportunity for the operator, it's a way of them trying to ultimately any sort of gambling product is how do you market it such that it looks like a phenomenal offer when in fact we need to make a margin, the operators need to make some money out of it. So it is about being creative, as creative as your competitor out there, and we see a lot of it in the industry. And like I say, that's where the industry is better than any in the world, I believe, at acquiring customers. And as I keep saying, it's about that scaffolding phase, and ultimately, if you're an operator just now and your product isn't one of the best, it needs to be by the time the World Cup comes around so that you retain those users.
Cool, interesting. This question is because, people sometimes knows that, okay, I want to bet or I want to do something and I want, to register. So I want to register as fast as I can because I want to do my bet, So I believe that this is very important, especially for a region that is, it's being onboarding on these games, in this activity, on this industry, because regulation, because that all the things that we've been spoken.
Just one more thing on that, and I work with I work with some companies that are billion-dollar companies in the US, even outside of gambling, right? And 90% of the time, or probably 100% of the time, we don't. What we provide is games, and we don't provide registration. We just redirect the user to the registration of our client. And it's a real exercise I would encourage everyone to do, is just pretend you're a new user on your own site and try to register from start to finish, because I can tell you that about 80% of my clients do not understand how cumbersome the process is. And a lot of the time, the first stage of us working with them is me showing them how their registration and onboarding process is working and how cumbersome it is. And a lot of the time, they get quite uptight about it. But at the same time, they need to know that whichever product that we're providing, the upstream and downstream of it needs to be working. We cannot solve all your problems. But it's just when you're talking about onboarding is a real key thing. And I think anybody that's doing this in America really needs to have a key eye on it.
Cool. Thomas, what about the onboarding in Hero and all this,
Yeah, thank you, Gabriel. And thank you once again, David, for wise words again. Yes, we're dealing with the population, and I will mention Brazil in this case. We're dealing with a massive population of 210 million people. But let us not forget that land-based casinos have been forbidden in Brazil since the 40s. People are just not used to gamble. They don't know how to place a bet. And that's one thing we take for granted. Yes, in other countries like Argentina, Colombia, Peru, Chile, Mexico, there are land-based casinos. People are somewhat educated on the casino industry, on the bet industry, on the bet world. That is not the case for Brazil. However, once again, I couldn't agree more with David when he said that your marketing approach, I'm just rephrasing the sentence, David, if I may, your marketing approach needs to come along with an educative approach. It has to come along education. You're literally in Brazil, I'll stick to Brazil in this answer, you literally have to grab your customer by their hand and show them, this is our site, this is where you need to click, this is how you make a deposit, this is how you register, and this is why we need your details. I can tell you, being Brazilian myself and having traveled throughout Latin America, from Mexico to Uruguay to Colombia, we're different cultures, but we're very similar in one thing. We're always on the back foot. We're always concerned that someone out there wants to take our money, wants to steal our money, because there's so much fraud, there's so much money laundering, there's so much, how do you call it? Card copying and credit card fraud, that we're always on the back foot. So if on top of this, your onboarding process is a massive form with a lot of detail and difficult to complete with many steps, it's very likely that you're going to lose a customer at registration. Then post that process, let's say you've made a good registration. Another issue that we normally have in Brazil and Latin America as well is the issue around payments processing, which again takes a very, very good degree of localization. For Brazil, you need to have payment solutions that make sense to Brazilians. You need to have Pix, you need to have Boleto, you need to have local bank transfers. For Mexico, you need to be able to somehow, I'm just mentioning examples, loose examples here. You need to mention OXXO. You need to mention bank transfers based on SPAY as well. Likewise for Chile and Peru. So it is just not enough to, again, I will be very, very straightforward in my example here, almost rude, but I don't mean to be rude. It's not enough to just translate a site from English to Spanish, put a credit card processor there and expect to make money. It is not going to fly. Localization goes beyond just a sombrero, a Mexican hat on the site saying, we're live in Mexico. It goes a bit beyond that. It goes from customer service, CRM, payment processing, onboarding, your SEO strategies and your SEO approach has to make sense for the local population and for the local market as well. So in a nutshell, that's what I would say. We've been touching, it's been a very broad discussion. I'm very happy to see that. But just like you approach any other market, if we're so serious, we've been so serious as companies, we've been so serious about markets like Germany, the UK in the past, India, why would we not take Latin America seriously? Why would we not prepare our product to be as competitive as it's been in Germany and in other markets in the recent past? So we got to approach it the very same way, if not more structured, because of the nuances that there are in the region.
Interesting, Thomas. Very, very interesting. Just to summarize, we need an onboarding, a smooth onboarding, but on the other hand, we have these issues of different countries. So maybe this campaign for the onboarding should start maybe 1 or 2 months before, just to have all people onboarded to start gambling, because, and to continue with the second question, because as we all know, the new extension of our hands is the mobile phone. So I believe, and because my personal experience, many times I was watching a match and, and texting and sending voices, messages or whatever. I believe that the betting and the gambling activity will be online at the same time of the game. So all this registration process should be, finished just to start and to get the customers inside the different games, all these activities before the match starts. So what do you think about the importance of the mobiles in this new, or in this soccer game, in this World Cup, which will be the impact?
Yeah, I mean, in Latin America, it's very hard to see people having a regular conversation. You often see people in the same room texting each other. So the use of mobile phones is it's fairly extensive here, and it's very well accepted. And it also offers a great opportunity, and also as cost of usage drops, competition increases, accessibility also exponentially increases at a similar rate. So, I mean, if you have a look at about 2 years ago, 2019, smartphones accounted for around about 69% of all mobile connections in Latin America, and that's predicted by 2025 to be up to around about 80%, which is a significant jump. And the share of the population actually who have access to a mobile phone over the same period from 2019, 68%, and it's predicted to be around about 73% by 2025. So, there's a huge opportunity, and it really is going to be the way that people will find potentially their very first line port of call for actually for placing their bets. And what we really are trying to do, especially in preparation for the World Cup at FSB, is to be a mobile first provider, a mobile first platform provider, which we believe is very, very significant. We're very, very conscious of evolving our smartphone penetration within Latin America. It's critical. It really, really is. It's the future.
Totally, David. Totally agree with you. And let me share some figures. For instance, in Argentina, there's more one mobile per people. Approximately 2. Each person has approximately, as in average, 2 mobiles. Uruguay and Chile are in the same number. So I don't have exactly data from other countries, but I believe that Colombia is in the same way. So the future is mobile. Do you agree, Gordon? John?
Yeah, I mean, the games we build are mobile first, sometimes mobile only. I mean, even on the desktop, it looks like yeah, it's just optimized for mobile, and it works on desktop, but it's such a small audience, and it's dying, it's going out. I mean, emerging markets like Africa and South America, you've got to assume that, you know, the people that are playing, the people that are gambling on the desktop or playing these games on the desktop are few and far between. It's really just people like that, their desk working, that somehow stumble onto it, well, after they finish working on their laptop. Really, it's just on the phone, on their phone.
All on the phone. And are you, you know, in terms of your, you know, your software and your activity, are you focused on the mobile, or you are still developing in both, you know, environments, the notebooks and or the laptops and the tablets? Don't know.
They work, whether it's mobile first or mobile only, they work on desktop and tablet, but the experience looks like it's on a mobile, really. We cut off the width and just, it's more of a view that looks like it's on a mobile. I mean, it's everything else is dead to me, and what we do.
I have to throw out my computer, you know, I mean, a computer at this time, you know.
Yeah.
So, well, thank you. And Thomas, what do you think about the mobile? How will it affect this World Cup, and will interact? Because, you know, as John said and David said, mobile first, life goes through a mobile.
I have a lot of different angles to approach this and how I consider this. For instance, if I think about my parents who are now 60s, my father is 62, my mom is 60, and their first contact with the internet world has been through a mobile phone. And that's interesting because there's a massive step that they took there. They didn't even touch a PC. They never touched a desktop. I mean, when it comes to internet in their lives. It's a very interesting one. However, we cannot say, let's just stick to mobile. I'll tell you why. When we look at research and studies done across Latin America, yes, it's massive. Almost 70% is the current penetration of mobile users and social media through mobile phones in Latin America, which is huge. However, let us not forget that there's still a 30% or just under 30% that still don't have access to mobile technology. There's still people in Colombia, in Brazil, Peru, that if they want to connect, what do? They go to internet cafes. There's still people using those old-fashioned mobile phones that don't necessarily have a phone. So that's one thing to consider. However, I do agree that mobile is very important. There's been a massive improvement when it comes to mobile penetration in the Latin American countries. However, I think it's also important, Gabriel, when we say mobile is the future, do we actually understand what mobile is? Because, for instance, what is the infrastructure like in Brazil? We may say mobile is the future. We might develop a very fast website, but 5G is just arriving in Brazil right now. We have countries with better infrastructure like Chile. When it comes to infrastructure, Chile, Uruguay, and Argentina are perhaps one of the top infrastructures in Latin America. However, what about the rest of the markets? Do they have infrastructure to actually have the best performing sites for mobile? Besides this, I have a personal opinion when it comes to mobile apps, because again, not everybody have smartphones to download your apps. Secondary problem, not everybody has space on their smartphones to download apps. So are apps really necessary, or are perhaps mobile optimized sites or sites that can render equally on a desktop device, on a mobile device? Isn't that perhaps a better way forward than developing crazy, heavy apps that will take a lot of your users' smartphone space? So I think we need to consider infrastructure, we need to consider affordability, we need to consider consumer readiness, because again, now I'm talking about using the example of my parents. They were just not ready. 2-3 years ago, they just didn't know how to use a smartphone, especially to go online. And then lastly, content and services. If we have all this factored in our strategy with a bit of a localization approach to it as well, then I absolutely agree. I said, yes, way to go, push forward. Your strategy is very likely to work. However, do not ignore points like infrastructure. I just mentioned the last example here very quickly. There was an operator that used to send SMSs for verification upon registration, and this was mandatory. You as a user sitting in Brazil, if you didn't confirm your registration through an SMS that was sent to you, you wouldn't get through the registration process. Guess what? The SMSs were being sent from the operator, but lost somewhere in the cyberspace. The SMS verification code just never reached some of those customers in Brazil. And I'm talking about more than 11,000. This is a real life example. I'm talking more than 11,000 customers that made their registration. They didn't receive the code. What did they do? They just moved on to the next site that didn't have that step. So that is important to consider as well.
Very, very interesting. However, I believe that no matter the stage that the region is in general, you said, and you're right, that all the countries are not on the same stage. So maybe the governments in the different countries will have to do something with that, because nowadays, because we are in pandemic, because you know, to speed all the processes, to boost all the activities, we all need the digitalization, and maybe the mobile is the best way to solve many things. And as John said, if we can have the same look and feel in a mobile than in a laptop or in a desktop, well, this could be more helpful for all the, you know, for all the customers, no matter the industry, you know. And for our industry, this is very important, because if we can find the same, you know, look and feel wherever we go, this makes, you know, confidence in the activity and in the game. So thank you for this approach. And now I would like to go in something more, I believe, more interesting for Thomas and me than others. That is, which will be the effect of having Argentina and Brazil in this World Cup, where we didn't get, you know, the ticket yet. Nor Argentina nor Brazil. However, we are planning to be there, but we all know that these are the two most important teams in Latin America. So what do you think about this? Because in one side we have Neymar, in the other side we have Messi, you know, and what do you think about, maybe we can change the round and make Thomas start, you know?
I'll be very brief. Thank you, Gabriel. Thank you for switching that around. But I'm very glad to hear comment like John. I don't know, I keep on thinking of John as Josh. My apologies again. I'm very glad to hear news like what John said, that as a sports provider and many other providers are considering and thinking of alternative markets. For instance, there's always an opportunity for a new market. Who's going to score first, Neymar or Messi? I am sure opportunities like this will come along during a potential Brazil and Argentina clash. I am not only looking forward to going and being present there in the World Cup, Gabriel, but I'm also looking forward for a clash, maybe Brazil and Argentina, a final, okay, even better. So yeah, looking forward. I think the entire continent is looking forward for that, Gabriel.
Totally agree. You know, I would like to have a good result as all wants, and I believe that Latin America will have a very good performance in this in this World Cup. So not because Argentina or Brazil will be there, but because all the teams in the region are, you know, are getting better and better and better, and this will push all the industry to make the people go inside the mobiles, do their bets, who will make the first goal, as Thomas says, and you know, this gives the opportunity to develop some kind of apps focus on that. Am I right, John?
Yeah, absolutely. So original content, specific games, clashes, you know, who will score first, and all sorts of bespoke markets and all sorts of bespoke products is sort of what we will be rolling out. I mean, I personally think Scotland will win the World Cup, but I might be wrong.
Yeah. No, please go ahead.
All sorts of original content we provide, so specific for the regions. So you need to wait and see.
Exactly.
I'll give you very good odds on that, John. Put your money on that, eh?
Yeah, I'll take it.
Just okay. Well, David, which is your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, I think just sort of briefly summarizing a little bit, you know, the Latinos and their passionate approach in general towards life, towards football, and you know, combining with the thrill of gambling and betting on matches. I mean, it's rocket fuel. It's an amazing opportunity, and you've got a regulated Brazilian market, and also you've got the Argentinian market starting to be regulated. You know, and they get a chance now to sort of once every 4 years be on the world stage. I think it's a fantastic opportunity for both countries. And you know, you can have a view as to whether Brazil or Argentina one is marginally ahead of the other with regards to approval and legislation. But having them both there, I think, is really going to move the opportunity forward. And we've talked about it. 35 years old, although that sounds extremely young to me, especially when Thomas was talking about the age of his parents. I think, you know, Messi retiring, if this is his last World Cup, I mean, yeah, that is just such an area, such a delicate and such a beautiful area that can be exploited. But I think really, you know, summarizing, I think we have to think about Brazil as the favourites at the moment. Argentina, last time I looked, was 6th favourites. Let's see sort of how that develops over time and see where England eventually come in. And maybe I need to include Costa Rica for my kids. But I think that, you know, operators need to make sure that they're aligned with their platform providers, so that it really needs to be done justice. And I think as somebody who's lived outside of the UK for 23 years, and the last 13 of which have been in Latin America, I think it's really important to sell the story of how significant this market is. And sometimes, you know, the head offices over in Europe have a little bit of issue, this sort of like understanding. And as we talked about, the number of different countries that are within, the different cultures, the different languages, the different dialects within one particular country, sort of making sure that that is all addressed. That's a job that I really have to do as being the boots on the ground out here, and I think that's critical too. So let's see what happens.
Cool. And well, I believe we are finishing, and I have a last question that I believe it's, you know, America is only one continent, but it's divided maybe in North America and South America. So we tend to compare Latin America with the United States, you know. So do you think that America, or, you know, Latin America compared with US, about the market, will be the same which are the opportunities in the future compared with the US, because we all know that now US is on fire because all the states are starting with their regulations. Many people is targeting the United States. But what do you think about Latin America compared with the United States? And maybe I will let Thomas to continue, just because.
Yeah, that's a very broad question, and that's a good thing. In very different markets, it's good to look at it from a potential perspective. However, look, the United States, when it comes to GDP and potential revenue, LTV, has a much bigger size than Latin America, I think. And I think if I look at it from a pragmatic perspective as well, I think on a long-term perspective, perhaps Latin America presents bigger opportunities. The United States, besides being regulated on a state-by-state level, there's also differences. Like, for instance, in which state is the NFL bigger than the NBA or MMA or even MSL? There's so many differences and nuances there as well within the United States. So I think it really depends on which angle you want to pick. Are you looking at revenue? Are we looking at long-term, long-standing customers? If I'm looking at revenue, for now, I'll definitely stick to the US when it comes to value per player, LTV. However, if we're looking at long-term potential opportunities, I'll definitely stick to countries like Brazil, Mexico, Chile, Peru, from a long-term revenue perspective.
Cool. John, which is your point of view?
So for us, it's a lot easier to service like UK, Europe, Africa, South America, because everyone just likes soccer and we build games or football, soccer. America is much more fragmented with all the different sports. Where we can add a lot of value is around the value chain is customer acquisition. So we acquire customers much more efficiently. So it's a really good market for us. But if you're an operator, you see how difficult it is to make any money out there because it's so expensive to acquire customers, and you're gambling on, no one knows what the lifetime value is. So you're gambling on the CPA that you're spending is going to be less than your lifetime value, and who knows? We don't know. So I do believe the lifetime value is probably the biggest in the world, but the customer acquisition cost is by far the biggest. We can acquire customers are much more easier in South America, much more easier in Africa, but the lifetime value is of course smaller as well. So it's such a broad question, but the one thing I wouldn't want to be at this point in time is an operator in the US with the amount of money they're losing. However, they're playing the long game, and if they can keep those customers for the 10 years that they expect to keep them, then they'll make a lot of money. But I think that's a bit of a gamble in itself.
Okay, understood. Thank you. Thank you for your comment. David, which is your point of view about the long-term status of Latin America?
It is very interesting question, and as both John and Thomas have said, it's it's a very broad area. Maybe needs a little bit more of a specific sort of direction if you want to answer it in a particular way. But I've looked at it from, if you like, the legislative point of view. Legislation can be both positive and negative. You look at the USA, their legislation is very heavy, very tight, very costly, whereas Latin America, maybe not quite so formal, although each country has a different sort of approach to how that they actually do it. So that's going to very much, I think, affect how things develop in Latin America compared to the United States. And then touching on Thomas's comments before, if you look at the respective populations of around about 660 million in Latin America and 328 million in the United States, but then you flip that around and look at the GDP, then it's over 22 trillion in the United States compared to 197 billion in Latin America. Then how does that sort of play into the equation? But I think really for me, the legislation is important, and if governments throughout Latin America take a sensible approach towards legislation, and they look at sort of cost of licensing, taxation, how they treat customer winnings, access restrictions, responsible gambling, all of those thrown into the mix will affect how the opportunity develops. And to come up with a concrete answer is pretty hard to say. But what I would say in a general vision is that looking to 2026, the next World Cup in the USA and in Canada, I am very optimistic and confident that you will hear Latin America talked of in the same breath as the likes of Europe and the United States. And I think that the perceived market will absolutely be up there with the rest of the world over the next 4 to 5 years. And just as an aside, I'm very honoured that I was brought in to help out FSB and to lead this very exciting opportunity forward, and start to get to know all the youngsters and the guys that have sort of from the online side. It's been a pleasure to start, and as well as opening up the old contacts for going back 20, 30 years too. So it's been a great opportunity, and this has been a great opportunity too to share with you, Gabrielle, and everyone. Thank you.
Well, thank you, David, for these last words, and I want to thank you, all of you, John, Thomas, and thank you, Sultan, for letting us to introduce and to show how Latin America is moving forward in this World Cup 22. So that's all from my side. Thank you all of you again, and
thank you, Gabriel. Thank you, guys. I'm all out of wise words for today. I think the wise words I had was during the last break. So now I would like to just point out that the next meetup, which will focus on Latin America, will be on the 12th of November during the Hipster Festival. And that's it for today. We will come back tomorrow with the Gaming Americas Q3 Meetup, which focuses on North America. So thank you everyone for joining us here, and for all those who are watching us on YouTube. Even later, make sure to check out the speakers. You can find them on LinkedIn, and you can connect with them over there. Thank you so much for tuning in. See you.